Good afternoon. Welcome to the second high-level Space Leaders Plenary. As we have already heard several times today, space exploration has always been a testament to human curiosity and ingenuity, pun intended. From the first steps of the Moon to the latest missions to Mars and deeper into space, our ventures have expanded our understanding of the universe and have driven technological advancements that benefit life in and on Earth. And as we face global challenges like climate change, resource scarcity, and the quest for sustainable development, the importance of space cooperation cannot be overstated. The deeper we go into space, the more we understand and learn about Earth's fragility. So we're fortunate to have a number of distinguished leaders with us for this second plenary from several space agencies across the world, and I look forward to hearing their views. I'm going to introduce them and ask them to come to the stage. First, His Excellency Salem Humaid Al-Mari. He is the Director General of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in the United Arab Emirates. Would you please join us? He has over 20 years of experience in the UAE National Space Program and played a pivotal role in the significant projects such as partnership with NASA in the Emirates airlock for the Gateway. He shaped the strategy and objectives of the UAE astronaut program and led the selection of astronauts. Under his guidance, the RSC has developed multiple satellites, spearheaded the Emirates Mars mission, and also the Emirates lunar mission, and much more. Second, I invite to the stage Caroline Laurent. Madame Laurent joined CNES, the French space agency, in 2019 as the Director for Orbital Science and Applications Projects and manages defense, science, and competitivity programs. Previously, she had a career in the French DGA, la Direction Générale de l'Armement, where she mostly worked on aeronautical and space military programs. She's also an officer in the French Legion of Honor and the officer of the National Order of Merit. Welcome, Madame. Next, Arif Karabegioglu, who is a board member of the Turkish Space Agency and also a faculty member at Koç University in Istanbul, Turkey. He has 30 years of research, development, management, and teaching experience in the space systems, rocket propulsion, energetic materials, and green energy. And he founded and managed several industries in the USA and in Turkey, and taught inter alia at Stanford University. Welcome. Dr. Walter Pelzer has been a member of the DLR Executive Board since 2018, and he is the head of the DLR Space Agency. Previously, he had several positions in industry and at the national and international level, and he served in several capacities in the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Research of North Rhine-Westphalen. And last but not least, Ms. Maria Chiara Noto is the Deputy Director for International Affairs and Head of International Cooperation and Space Diplomacy of the Italian Space Agency, and she also there leads the International Cooperation and Space Diplomacy Office. She is a lawyer, and she is specialized in international law and brings over 15 years of academic research and teaching experience in Italy and abroad. So welcome, and I'm excited to hear your views about a number of questions. And before we go into some specific questions, I would like to ask each of you the same question, which is whether you could give a brief update of the status and plans of your country in the field of space exploration. Let's start with Salem.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Namaste. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for organizing this event and inviting us here, and also the hosts for a wonderful welcome. It's really an incredible country and a beautiful country, and I'm very happy to be here. Really, to give a quick update about what's happening in the UAE, we are relatively new to space. We started about 20 years ago. Our main objectives early on were Earth observation, so building small Earth observation satellites, then slightly building them bigger, trying to nationalize the development of these technologies in the UAE, which is what we have achieved over the past 20 years. So today I can say that the UAE moved from a country 20 years ago that is building zero space technologies to today a country that is developing very large systems such as 1-ton Earth observation satellites and the like, all in the UAE, including UAE industry. So UAE companies are actually building these components. Then we shifted towards exploration. Part of that is, of course, for the scientific gains, the scientific benefits, but we see really the impact of exploration missions on the country and its people. That exploration shift really focused in 3 areas. One of them is Mars, and we sent a mission to Mars in 2020, continue operating that, and it's currently imaging and focusing on the moon of Deimos around Mars. We also focused on the moon and sending robotic missions to the surface of the moon. We built one of the smallest rovers ever to be sent to the moon. Unfortunately, that mission crash-landed in 2022. And now we are building our 2nd and 3rd missions, and we expect, hopefully, to launch our 2nd mission, Rashid Rover 2, next year. We also then went into human spaceflight over the past 10 years, mainly in cooperation with international partners such as Roscosmos, ESA, and the United States NASA. And that, of course, we built an astronaut corps of 4 astronauts. They've been training over the past 5-6 years. 2 of them flew. One flew on board a Soyuz. He's sitting right there. Hazza al-Mansouri is the first UAE astronaut about 7 or 8 years ago. And then our 2nd astronaut, Sultan Niadi, flew in 2022 on a 6-month duration mission to the International Space Station. So this was the first time for an Arab country and the UAE to have such a long duration mission. We're very happy with all of the collaboration that went there. Our final cooperation or final update that we're focusing on is, of course, cooperation beyond what we are looking at today, and that is exploring the moon and building missions like the Gateway Space Station. So the UAE now is a partner in that space station. And of course, we're looking at what's beyond the moon towards Mars. Thank you.
Very exciting and very impressive how indeed in a few decades you can build such a program. Compliments. Madame Laurent, would you like to tell us about the situation in France and the view?
I want to thank our host too.
It's not working for now.
I want to thank our host too. I learned today that ISRO and CNES share the date of birth. It's 1962, so we were born in the same year. And France and CNES, as a French National Space Agency, works in balancing their projects between the European projects run by ESA and the national projects. We always try to have a good balance between them. And of course, in exploration, a lot of projects are managed by ESA. And we are as ESA member state, we contribute actively to the policy of ESA and the projects, and also our industry is involved. And in most of ESA scientific projects, there are national contributions apart from the global budget given to ESA. So we are an important contributor to the ISS operations. We have an operating center in France. And one of our major projects concerning exploration is that we accompany astronauts and we prepare experiments for more especially for French astronauts, because we try to focus on them and have projects around them. We prepared Thomas Pesquet flight with experiments, and we are now preparing Sophie Adno's flight in 2026. I want to stress that for us it's very important to have a female astronaut, because it's just the 2nd one in all French history of human flight. And astronauts are very important for inspiring young people, young students or kids. And having a female astronaut, I think, is very important in France to give little girls the interest in science, scientific careers, or even engineer careers. So we are very happy to prepare the flight for Sophie for next year. We also have around flight human flight, a French institute, medical institute called MEDES, that prepares their flights and that works on space medicine. We are an important contributor, of course, to the Artemis ESA's contribution and to the Mars sample return, which is an important program for French science. And our industry is very much involved. We are involved in the gateway. We are involved in the service modules of Orion. So of course, we are concerned with what's happening, and maybe we'll talk about that later on. But we are also contributors to other European projects like ExoMars. And we have French industry, French startups involved in the service call that made ESA for a LEO cargo return from private companies. So that's the European part of CNES activities, and we balance that with international contributions, multilateral or bilateral projects. Of course, CNES works, the national budget is more national when it's related to defense or competitivity of our industry, but everything that is related with science, climate monitoring or astrophysics or exploration is all about international cooperation. And we have, again, projects with NASA. We have worked a lot with NASA on Mars missions, on Curiosity, on Perseverance. We have French instruments. We work in the operations with them. But we also have a very important cooperation with JAXA on the MMX mission, where we work on the flight dynamics, but also we have a rover, a cooperation with DLR, just there. And it is an important mission on the Mars moons flying next year. We have an important cooperation with you, with Emirates on the Rashid. We had small cameras on the Rashid 1 and 2, and we had some vacuum tests in CNES. We have starting a cooperation with India on human flight. We have a long history of cooperation with India on Earth observation, and we are starting in human flight exploration by helping them with preparing the operations, and on medical surgeons too with the MEDES. And we also have an important cooperation with China. We had an instrument, Dawn instrument on Chang'e 6 that flew in June 2024 for measuring radon. And these are some examples of what we're working on. We are working on studies and architectural studies on lunar rovers, on lunar robotics, on some other instruments for exploration. And we also have an inclusive project called Spaceship, where we work on mobility, on fooding and nutrition, on health, on energy for a future lunar habitat. And we try to work with non-space companies that come to work with us on all these different items, and try to bring innovations that could have then an application on Earth for the good of humanity. And I'd like to mention an important project in France, which is the Novespace company, which is operating the Airbus Zero-G. I'd like to mention it because Thomas Pesquet, I don't know if he's still here this afternoon, but has been appointed as a chair of that company, and we are very happy about that. And it operates the zero-gravity flights. And that's an overview of
Thank you.
French.
And of course, France is such a long-standing space power. We could go on for much longer, I presume. But very impressive. And indeed, the spread between activities in the context of an international organization like ESA, but also the EU, as well as having national programs, is of course often an aspect that states have to deal with, especially concerning national security programs. And very happy also to hear about Sophie, about the French female astronaut. I fully support your view. How is it in Turkey, Arif? Tell us.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking IAF for this very kind invitation. And it's a great pleasure to be here in India. It's my first time. I love it. Hopefully, I'll have 2 more great days. Anyway, what I'd like to tell you is the Turkey's journey in space actually have started late in 1990s. We started by operating our own satellites. We actually did some satellite technology development, satellite system development in the 2000s. But things really started to kick off in 2018 when we started the Turkish Space Agency. And then Turkish president in 2021 actually announced essentially a space program for Turkey. And in that space program, we had like 10 important objectives, and 3 of them were incredibly important. The first one was the first Turkish astronaut, which was successfully sent out last year. The second one is the lunar mission. Lunar mission is going to happen very soon. We'll talk about that hopefully a little bit more. And the third one is a spaceport. Thinking of a spaceport so that we can, launch our own rockets into space, maybe launch other people's rockets into space. That's the third thing that we had in mind. So we can say that in 2018, we actually shifted gears to a high gear. So that was very, very important for Turkey. That actually started some very new companies, also the private sector in Turkey. A good example is Fergani company, which I'm also partly involved with. This company is actually in the process of building a LEO constellation doing navigation. So we're going to have 100+ satellites doing navigation. We're going to have orbital vehicles that will be essentially taking satellites from one orbit into another one, doing it cost effectively. So we don't only help our own satellites, but hopefully sell that service to other people, to other nations, and eventually launch vehicles potentially. There are companies like that. The numbers are not adequate, but hopefully they'll be increasing over time. The projects or the areas that we're going to be essentially working essentially in the deep space area is government has to obviously support that, and government is very keen on supporting the moon. So the moon is the obvious target. It is so close and so large that it's very hard to ignore. So the Turkish government really is keen on developing lunar technologies, and we also like to get into areas of what we call lunar surface technologies. This includes logistics, communication, navigation, and in situ material production. So that is an area that we're trying to get into technology-wise. We also have our lunar project, which will actually take our nation to the moon. Hopefully in a couple of years we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. Manned space flight. We sent our first astronaut, I briefly mentioned that. We'd like to continue that effort. Maybe we'll not send a lot of astronauts in the near future, but we'd like to actually do science missions. We'd like to participate with the nations who are doing manned space flight, help them with certain technologies and other things. So that is also what is happening. But the most important, in my opinion, is really the private sector. All the things that I've mentioned so far is essentially the government pushing things. But I don't think you can actually make an impact by just having the government pushing things in space. I'm a keen believer of the commercial market, the one that actually grew in US very successfully. That's what we're trying to achieve in Turkey. So as the Turkish Space Agency, we're trying to harvest the private sector. Turkey has some advantages. Geography is one huge advantage in that area. We're really close to a lot of different places, right? And then we have an industry which is very good, and also we have a lot of young people who are very interested in technology and science, and luckily space. So we think that we can make use of that and hopefully build up a private sector which will be essentially marketing to the world, not only to Turkey but also the entire world. And finally, the space launch is an important area. You need to have your own capability to take things into space because that is required for independence. But it's more than that. Nowadays, if you look at the field, look at the world, what you see is not the lack of launchers. There are a lot of launchers, a lot of launching companies, especially in the US. But there is a shortage of launch sites, spaceports. That is something that we're working on in Turkey, and obviously the requirements for the best spaceport, you can list them as essentially close to the equator, right? Have a huge range, essentially a big chunk of water, and look eastwardly. There are only a limited number of places that you can think of. So we're working with a lot of them right now. So anyway, so that is sort of the things that we're thinking about and working on in Turkey in a nutshell. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Arif. And of course, we will all meet next year in Antalya. We see the beautiful photos here, and so that also underlines, and we'll talk about it later, but underlines also the big jump and achievements that Turkey has made. Thank you. Walter, how is it in Germany? Could you tell us a bit about space exploration?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to echo the thanks of my colleagues to the organizers and hosts. It's a wonderful event. Really, IAF and ISRO made a great job. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure and impressive what you can put together when we look at the agenda of this conference. When we look at exploration in Germany, we have also the approach of, let's say, having two pillars. The first pillar is what we do within ESA. The second one is what we do on, let's say, national level, which is not national, it's bilateral, multilateral with other states. But what space is for the government an instrument for international cooperation, especially within Europe. That's the reason why we spend most of our budget within ESA for exploration. So Germany is the biggest contributor to the so-called E3B, so the exploration program of ESA. And main topics were, on the one hand side, the Columbus module, which was built in Germany together with our ESA partners, where we were prime on the one hand side. Then we have in Germany the European Astronaut Center, which is not an ESA site, it's run by ESA, but it's actually done together with our partners from CNES, from ASI, and run by ESA. It's right in Cologne. And next to it, we built the Lunar facility. It's the most modern facility to test actually equipment for robots and for experiments in something which is, let's say, as close as possible to the lunar surface. So we came up with special and actually 2 or 3 different kinds of materials which are very similar to the regolith on the moon, to make sure that astronauts or also equipment we send over there are tested on a well setup. This is implemented last year. We will set up also an upgrade of NV-Hub. NV-Hub is actually also on the same site. It's a place where all European astronauts, after they before and usually also after they get back from a mission from ISS, spend some time for medical and other training, or let's say tests. And this facility we will invest and enhance as well. This is what we do as well. And it shows that we plan for post-ISS. We have a clear picture for post-ISS that nevertheless, whoever will actually be in low Earth orbit, that this will be a partner of Germany. Within ESA, maybe also without ESA, bilateral. This is both ways are actually under construction. One of the teams, the Voyager team, has a pretty big Airbus footprint, and they try to set up actually some equipment in Germany. So this is also one of the topics where we focus on. We bought already some deorbiting capacity that we can continue microgravity tests after ISS from a private company. Actually, that was also mentioned by Joseph earlier on. So we both bought by a private company to foster actually also private investment. to foster commercialization in this region. So this gives you a glance that exploration, low Earth orbit will be a stronghold in the German picture. We spent from the national budget a big amount of money for experiments on ISS or in low Earth orbit, and this will continue. I'm pretty sure about it. When it comes to Moon, of course, Artemis is one of our most important topics. Germany is prime when it comes to the Orion capsule, the European, so-called European Service Module. And so we are very keen to see what's going on over there. It was already mentioned, this is something we can maybe discuss later on. Nevertheless, as Joseph said already, and I only can stress it, we in Germany will make sure that Europe and as well Germany remains as a reliable partner. So we will do at the end of the year at the ministerial conference everything to make sure that we stay in line with all contracts we put in place. So from this point of view, no matter what's going on right now, and there are a lot of, let's say, uncertainties, we will put in place that Artemis can be put in place as actually planned. And this is for Orion as well as Gateway, as well as other program parts which are actually necessary to get human back to the surface of the moon. And this time not only to put up a flag over there, this time to stay over there. And then of course Mars, and maybe Mars is a good example for something we do bilateral. This is something where we have programs with JAXA, for example, where we actually contribute instruments to some of their missions, Hayabusa, for example. And this will be, of course, a focus in the future as well. So this just a brief overview that we do, on the one hand side, programs within ESA, a few more. Ramses will show up, and to actually look at Aphobis when it shows up in 2027, I think. And and on the bilateral, multilateral way, we do a lot of instrumental or joint missions, but this is outside usually of the ESA team with India, for example, DLR. We have some projects with India, with JAXA as one of the main partners, US bilateral as well, but some other member states as well.
Thank you, and indeed another good example of a very ambitious program, and indeed that Luna building that was built in Cologne must be very impressive, and I'm sure all the astronauts hope to set foot there and as an exercise to go to the moon. Maria Chiara, not last but not least, tell us about Italy, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me express my gratitude for inviting me to this panel, and congratulations to all organizers for this successful Congress. The Italian exploration strategies focuses mainly on 3 areas, LEO, the Moon, and other celestial bodies such as Mars, supporting both human and robotic exploration and strengthening in-orbit operational capabilities. In LEO, as you know, Italy plays a key role in the International Space Station via both ESA and the long-standing partnership with NASA. ASI has conducted more than 70 scientific and technological experiments aboard of the International Space Station and built more than 40% of the International Station's pressurized volume, gaining a globally recognized expertise on that. Concerning Moon, Italy is one of the first countries to sign Artemis Accords and is developing the first lunar habitation module. And also we have another premiership, the first GNSS receiver for lunar use, LUGRA, which already launched a few weeks ago. Through ESA, ASI also contributes to the Lunar Gateway, lunar space station, and other missions. Concerning Mars, finally, Italy collaborates with ESA and other international partners, including NASA, JAXA, and CSA, on various missions, such as Mars Sample Return, robotic exploration with Rosalind Franklin, already mentioned by ESA. And I think this legacy makes Italy a really cornerstone in space exploration and a champion in international relations.
Thank you very much. So indeed, same also having both national programs and cooperative programs within ESA. It's interesting also because we see also other regional agencies originating very recently. The African Space Agency was also inaugurated. We have something similar in Latin America and also the Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization. But it never means that you do only that, obviously. And so it is good to cooperate, and it's good also to have your independent programs, I guess. So thank you for that overview. Going a little bit more in some specific questions. And Walter, I would like to ask you about the news that shook us all last Friday, I guess, when the news came out about the top level or skinny budget that came out of the White House that would cut the budget for SLS and Orion after, I think, 2 more flights, and that would really cut down International Space Station and, of course, also the Gateway program to be cancelled, science missions, education missions. Of course, it still all has to be confirmed, and we hope that there will be some mitigation of these quite dramatic effects. But could you give us your view on what this means for us being here in India talking about global space exploration?
Yes, thank you very much for pointing out this tricky topic. As you said, there were some kind of rumors, but since last Friday we know that the skinny budget from the White House is out, and it says very clearly ending SLS. Actually, Orion or Artemis 3 will be the last one, or is supposed to be the last one. Gateway will not be put into practice, just to main 3. Not talking about all the science programs which will be not actually pursued as planned. And this is for Europe, but also for other partners, a topic we have to think about. And for Europe, we can say we as a team in ESA, we prepared already for a situation if this plan will be put into practice, because as you said, this is, we call it work in progress. And for example, I mentioned that we do also bilateral projects with US. One of them was Sophia, a Boeing 747 with infrared radar and a few things. And actually the White House always ruled out this project, and the Congress put it in again. So, and I'm an optimist. I know that the Congress looks different this time. Nevertheless, until we have really the final budget, we will stay with the way ahead. We will show to our NASA partners and all other partners in Artemis that we will put everything in place to make sure that the Artemis program will be put into practice. Nevertheless, of course, we prepare for otherwise as well. But this is not a plan B. It's actually a fallback position. So this is what is obvious. And if this plan will be put into practice, a lot of question marks show up. Because, of course, there are a lot of ambitious plans, what they want to do, how they want to be going to Moon and to Mars. And I'm very impressed about a lot of things I see in US. I just was, prior to the conference in Colorado Springs in Texas, had the chance to look into details regarding the production of Starship. I'm really impressed about it, but there are a lot of things to do until they are able to go into low Earth orbit, until they're able to refuel, and then there's a long, long ride to go to Mars. And I can't picture that the US will, let's say, have such a big gap between Artemis 3 and really be capable to go to Mars in this time frame and open up space for others to actually be the leading nation in exploration. So from this point of view, I hope that Congress will have some kind of similar point of view and make a little bit changes which are more in favor for the partners. That's what I hope. There's no serious ground, but taking into account what this skinny budget would mean for science and for exploration and for international partnership, and exploration is about international partnership, I hope that there will be some changes.
I hope so too. And I am like you, and I think we owe it to humanity to be optimist. You know, if we start to say it's all going down the drain, then we are not fighting for it. And so I am very happy to hear that ESA will continue its plans as planned and its commitment, and that there is no plan B for now. I don't know if Arif or Salem, would you like to react on this point before we get into other points, or Arif?
I could not as a board member of Turkish Space Agency, but maybe as a scientist who studied the hell out of these things for many, many years. It takes 9 months to go to Mars, 3 days to go to the moon. So which one do you go? That's obvious, right? You start with the moon and then you go to the Mars. If you want to go to Mars, you need nuclear propulsion. So you have to be prepared for it. Some people at SpaceX, my students, may not be happy with that statements, but what can you do? Thank you.
A sense of realism. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I echo, I think, what Walter said overall about the program. I think the UAE's position is similar. You know, what we do is most of our programs are built on international collaboration. We collaborate extensively with strong partners such as CNES, NASA, ASI on different programs in different types and different ways. So when we look at our participation in terms of Gateway, that is obviously being part of this international collaboration. As we are the latest entrant, you know, and we are smaller than the other entities, we're obviously looking at how we can make sure that our participation remains and is positive. If there happens to be a pivot, you know, the one element could be that, you know, what's proposed is Gateway's cancelled, but there could also be slight changes that occur or something like that, and it remains, or it can remain as is. So what we think is we have to be quite nimble, and if there's some slight pivots that occur from now until October, or in October, then we have to see how we can move with them and keep these collaborations going. So I think sometimes you do face challenges. Space is hard. Collaborating is hard. If it was easy, then you know, everybody would be doing it. And I think when you collaborate, it's much harder. And we really have to be flexible in seeing how we can really make this collaboration go forward.
Thank you. And that's also, again, good to hear. And I think we all agree that going it alone is not the best option. If we go together, we will go faster, we will last longer. So that's, of course, much better. And indeed, Moon as a stepway to Mars is an important message. The scientific data underline that. Let's first look a bit at Mars again before we go back to the Moon. And Caroline, may I ask you what is the position of France or of CNES in the field of Mars exploration in terms of international collaboration or national ambitions? Sorry. Yeah.
Mars is very important at a science level in France, and in France we try to promote or to maintain scientific excellence, and it's an important planet, of course, and it's very important even for the knowledge of our Earth and our future on Earth. So that's why we were so much involved in many Martian missions. And we will continue being very much involved in the future. I think that we may not have to prepare very fast for plans B or C's, but yes, I think we need to develop alternative cooperations than the ones we were used to. And we had a very interesting cooperation on ISS, which is not Mars, which was without exchange of money. We were kind of paying for the flight of our astronauts by contributing in nature or contributing in experiments or with assets. And that was a very interesting way of cooperating. And even if we can have a lot of money coming from private companies, and if we all are looking at what private companies can bring, I think cooperation between space agencies will still have a big future on exploration and on Mars missions and on planetary missions. And we should look more into cooperating between one another, the ones we are here today, actually, like the ISRO or Emirates or Canadian or JAXA. And I think we should plan more missions with one another in the future. And we have a lot to learn from each other and a lot of assets.
Yeah, that's, I think, an important message. And indeed, I agree also the ISS model is really unique. It is one of the biggest international corporations, and that model of bartering and agreeing on building things without exchange of funds is quite unique. It has also been extended to Gateway, and we could perhaps also use it for Mars or even for future low Earth orbit outposts. Of course, with one big difference, that we will have to involve private entities in a different level. We'll get to that as well. But first, let's go back to the moon. And Turkey has, of course, plans to send a lander to the moon. And I wonder if the recent space strategy that was adopted in Turkey also addresses sharing of benefits between all countries.
It absolutely does. Anybody who's done anything in space knows that it's a very difficult, harsh environment. That is the only place, if it is, that you need to collaborate to do anything, achieve anything, right? We learned that. But we also look at space and the moon project in a different way. We look at it not collaboration with the countries to achieve the essentially space projects, but to essentially improve relationship with other nations. So we look at it from the other perspective as well. The moon project in Turkey is going actually very well. We have two phases for it. The first phase, which is an orbiter, lunar orbiter, and a lander, is going to be going out in 2026, late 2026, or latest 2027, depending on the launch windows. So that is happening, and there's going to be a lot of science mission. TÜBİTAK Uzay doing is the spacecraft, and Delta V Corporation is doing the propulsion. So in this project, we're actually using an indigenous propulsion system. It was developed in Turkey, and it was essentially, it's going to be put on to work. In fact, the idea with that project was to be able to space qualify that propulsion system. That was the primary objective, not to reach to the moon. So, in fact, that actually reached some results actually in the commercialization. In fact, the commercialization of that technology is going to take place later this year. The first flight of that motor is going to happen later 2025 in a commercial company is essentially building an orbital transfer vehicle, and that vehicle will be essentially testing that system before we even go to the moon. So that is actually the model we want to build. The second thing is, the second phase is lunar lander. That's essentially a soft landing. And soft landing requires more difficult propulsion. It needs to be throttleable. That is also being developed, but it's going to take a little bit longer. And then the next phase would be lunar transportation out of other than rovers. Because if you want to cover distances on the moon, you need rockets, not rovers. And moon on the surface transportation is the third stage that we're actually looking into right now.
Very impressive, and I love your scientific sense of realism in the stepwise approaches. On sharing of benefits, Maria Chiara, I would like to ask you also, because ASI also has a long tradition of collaboration, for instance, with emerging space nations, such as in Kenya, where you have the Borgilio Space Center, or also with Argentina through the SAOCOM satellite system. How do you see that the global space community can really foster that meaningful inclusion of emerging space nation in space exploration?
Thank you for your question. When we talk about the inclusion of emerging space nation, we have to be really concrete. There is a gap between emerging spacefaring nation in terms of expertise that could be reduced through capacity building, technological transfer, and really inclusive partnership. Italy has a long story in collaboration with emerging space countries. You mentioned Kenya. With this agency, we co-manage the Broglio Space Center in Malindi, where we organize courses in education, training, and capacity building. Another example you mentioned is the collaboration with the CONAE Argentina. We co-shared an Earth observation system called SIAGE a long time ago. But let me mention also the International Space Forum, which is an initiative supported jointly by the Italian Space Agency and the International Astronautical Federation. This year, it will be in Philippines, involving all the emerging countries of the Southeast Asia regions. And another example is the Italian Mattei Plan for Africa, involving 22 African nations. We are working on a program of education course and capacity building initiatives. And the last, let me mention also the next Italian chairmanship at COBOS in 2026-2027. Inclusion emerging countries will be one of the key, priority for Italy. I believe that Italian approach is the successful one for collaborate with the emerging space countries.
Thank you very much. And of course, also, as Italy will also be serving as the next presidency with Gabriella of the IAF, which is also excellent in uniting all space people. So very good news. Caroline, apart from benefit sharing, I think another important topic is sustainability. And we often say that France has one of the strictest regulation in terms of debris mitigation and sustainability of space activities, which of course will mean that we have to preserve our access to do all those missions to Moon and Mars. Could you say a few words about France's view on sustainability of space activities?
Since we are talking a lot about cooperation, I would say that yes, we have a very strong regulation, but if it is too strong and it only applies to French companies, it's not very fair for French companies. So the only goal was to be a kind of leader or to pave the way. But I think Japan has almost the same legislation as we are. We are very close. Now our priority is to make it become European regulation, and then maybe at some point a world regulation, or at least have common space traffic control and space traffic management regulations or issues. So I would say that yes, we have been strict and we have worked a little bit in advance, but now the only priority is to make it become global and shared by everyone. And I wanted to add something about cooperation, because exploration is the most inspiring area in space applications for everybody, for kids, for education, for a great public. And exploration is also the most expensive and the most technically challenging area, which is why we almost all require, especially small countries, cooperation, international cooperation. But it's also, as it is very inspiring, it's also much more political than other applications, and having international cooperation is still more important than in other areas, because it shows the public that we can share values, and one of the most important values being the durability, the sustainability of the planet, of the world, of the space. So if only for showing everybody that we can all share that value, it's important to make it global and international.
Absolutely true. It should not be one country who goes it alone. We have to follow that standard, and it is really quite essential. Salem, I wonder about another kind of actor that we see emerging. We mentioned it several times, the private entities. UAE will be sending its Rashid 2 rover soon. And how do you see the involvement of private entities in UAE space program?
Yeah, that's an important question. I think, when our space program started in the early 2000s, that thought wasn't something that was a main focus for us. It was mainly that the government sector is able to act as an anchor and really lead these big, large projects. As we matured, then that started to be a very important topic for us. And now it's, when we look at our latest satellite that we launched in January of last year, it's called MBZ-SAT. It's about a 1-ton Earth observation system, but the majority of the components were developed within UAE industry. So whether we're talking about electronics or harnesses, cabling, a lot of the software, even the full mechanical structure, even the raw materials, the aluminium, it's all UAE aluminium. So getting the UAE private sector involved was key. The challenge that we face and still face is trying to get new companies or startups to start up and then have enough business looking at what's happening in the region or in the UAE. So the way we try to mitigate that is to bring existing large entities such as whether it's companies from oil and gas, aluminium manufacturers, or that work on very large projects already in the UAE and sort of retool them for space. And it's a process that took us about 5 or 6 years. Because again, space is quite niche, it's quite small, the capacity is much smaller, but that's the way that we found it more successful in the UAE. Today, we have companies like Strata that develop a lot of components of Boeing and Airbus planes, but they also do all of the structure for our satellites. And that's the way that we've been able to sort of succeed. Now, our next challenge for the next 10 years is really how we can get small startups involved, smaller entities to really build up around the space ecosystem that we have. And we and the UAE Space Agency are looking at this as one of our key challenges for the next 10 years, and we're working on making sure that we get a big number of startups involved. And I think what we heard from India today is a prime example of how you can do it and do it the right way. And we want to learn from that process. And hopefully we can maybe mimic and see the lessons learned from India and implement some of them in the UAE.
Great. And time is really flying. We have about 7 minutes left, and I had a whole round of other questions, but I may ask a few of them as lightning questions and asking you to give a brief answer, and perhaps following up immediately with Salem about the UAE astronaut program that you have been instrumental in. Could you say a few words about how astronauts are important for inspiring youth and STEM studies and so on?
Sure, yes. That program, actually, when it was kicked off and presented to our leadership, we had a gap of over 30 years of not having an Arab astronaut in space. The last one that was launched was in 1987 or 86 at that time. So what we said was, and what we noticed is that there's no Arab alive, really, that can really, or young people that can associate with somebody who speaks their language and is from the region that went to space. So when we went into this program, our objective was that we have a long-term sustainable program, and that's why we basically selected the right partners to work with them long-term. And what I've noticed is that I can talk all day, people can talk all day, say whatever they want, but when an astronaut comes on stage and waves his hand, that is what people look at. And if there's a video of him in space, especially when they go to space and do experiments and do things that are closer to children, you inspire thousands of people. Our astronauts have visited over 250,000 students in schools. We get over 25,000 school kids who come to the center every year just for our astronauts. We, of course, introduce them to human spaceflight and then flood them with Mars and engineering and science and tell them that's what you really should be focusing on as well. But I think it's one of the best tools to really inspire kids and adults to go into space.
And the same is the case, I'm sure, in Turkey, because you also had an astronaut who went into space and inspiring youth. And
Absolutely. I actually go to speaking arrangements like this with our astronaut Alper Gezerabci every once in a while. It's very depressing because everybody's interested in him and nobody's interested in a scientist, obviously, but that is how it should be. But the point is this, as you say sometimes, there is an impulse you get when you send an astronaut out. The key thing is it's an ignition point. But how do you sustain combustion after that ignition? That is the key point. Its ignition impulse is critical, but sustainment is the big deal, difficult part. So that is what we're really struggling in Turkey. We want to get the space projects going so that the public, young people will get interested. So that's what we're trying to do. The Moon Project obviously is a good example, but there is something even better that's going to happen, IAC 2026.
of course.
So that is the best thing to follow the astronaut, right? So we're going to have that event in Antalya. It's a wonderful city. I invite everybody here in this room and everybody else to Antalya. Hopefully we're going to have a great event. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And indeed, it is not only youth, it is also the general public. And sometimes I feel that we are not always doing a good job at convincing the general public of all the benefits that space brings for humanity here on Earth. After all, we are on spaceship Earth, as our Dutch astronaut, ESA astronaut, officially always used to say. And it's true, they are ESA astronauts, but they are first and foremost seen as icons of their country. Let's address a few recent developments in sort of the governance of space in Germany and in Italy to conclude. Germany has adopted a new space strategy in 2023. Could you say a few words about key priorities in that strategy? We have heard some, but perhaps you want to add some?
I can, but it would be kind of obsolete due to the fact we will not have a new one, but we have since yesterday a new government, and they came up with something which is definitely more important. Space was in the German government not on the same level like in France or in Italy, which caused sometimes questions when the politicians try to meet each other. That was a topic. And I'm more than happy that we were successful in raising the political attention for space in Germany significantly. So it was very low, and now it's for the first time we have space on the nameplate of a ministry. This is something which is on the first hand only a sign, but if you look in the coalition paper, it's a really bold statement for both pillars I mentioned. First of all, for the ESA ministerial we will host at the end of the year, but also for the national program where we, for the first time, really open the door to say space diplomacy. That we really go in the direction to work with others together. Italy just showed what they do with Africa. France is doing with CNES the same excellent programs, and I'm really happy that we will be in the position to do the same. I think this is more important than some paper which is patient. Here is something we really can put into practice, and I look forward to work with, of course, my colleagues over here and with everybody here in the room. Thank you very much.
That gives much hope. Very good. And Maria Chiara, in Italy recently, the draft law passed through the parliamentary processes. I don't know what the latest situation is, but Italy will be one of the next states to have their own national space law. Can you say a few words about the status?
Yes, of course. Let me say first that many countries consider space law as a starting point. Actually, it's the result of a mature space ecosystem built through investment in research, industries, and space program. Italy followed this path and decided to adopt its space law only when it was ready to transit to space commercial activities. Last December in 2024, the Italian government adopted the space policy guidelines, confirming space exploration as a national priority. Recently, so building on this vision, the Chamber of Deputies approved the first draft of space law, which introduce mechanism for authorization, liability rules, and other procedure for supervising space activities in line with Italy's international obligation. Even though the legislative process is still underway, this represents a significant step towards aligning the space framework, the law framework, with the Italian ambition in space domain. So yes.
Thank you. And indeed, what you say is very true. France was in the same situation, had already decades of space leadership, and before having the French Space Operations Act, and I'm sure in Germany it will follow soon as well. It's exactly, we are at 00.00, so I will have to conclude this panel, but I really appreciated your openness, your willingness to also address difficult issues, but to underline especially the need for inspiration, for collaboration, and for, despite the things that are happening in the world. And I wanted to just mention a sentence that a student wrote recently in a paper, and she said, "Space exploration is humanity's dress rehearsal for survival, collaboration, and self-transcendence." I found that a beautiful thought, and with that I would like to conclude this panel. Thank my panelists, and thank you for listening. Unfortunately, again, no time for questions, but we have to move on to the next panel. Thank you very much.